No intro today, we get straight to the point. Tip number 1. Understand your Soulspike mechanic. What I consider a Soulspike mechanic is something that enables you to be more effective at gathering souls than the other people on the map. Before understanding how you can gain more souls than other people, you have to understand how to not get less souls than other people. You have to get trooper waves, and your only excuse for missing them is if you're getting a quick kill, a longer team fight that will give you an objective, or if you're playing in the urn. Why are these economically valid excuses? Because they count as Soulspikes. Let's dive into this concept. If you were playing as the sandbox's stats dummy, your default option would be to kill a wave, then do as much damage to a camp as possible, go back and get some boxes before the next wave comes. Luckily for you, each character has a more interesting kit than just a water gun. Before we get to the later stage of the game, where characters assume their role that their cooldown pushed them into, we have a phase of the game where some abilities and kits are much more efficient at some tasks on the map than others. A hero can either be active or inactive. What I call an inactive hero is when its biggest soul income is from the Trooper Jungle box cycle, the one we just talked about. An active hero has another Soulspike mechanic. An inactive hero wants to get active as soon as possible, and dying before you get active is a real issue in a lot of games. This is why, for example, Monster Rounds is a very common item for heroes whose kits aren't too practical early in the game. You do not want to die, you want to push the wave and keep doing your thing until you get to the right amount of souls or whatever item or cooldown you need to unlock. Early movement items to rotate between lane and boxes are also very common for this kind of heroes. We're gonna go through another simple separation that is between laners and roamers. Laners are characters who get their power spikes with more souls and that tend to benefit from random duels on lane. So as you may guess, most laners are heroes with 1v1 capacity at any point after a laning phase. Laners tend to get active later, as they aren't the best heroes in teamfights, but more in general, it's not a good idea to fight until your hero is active anyways. If you get a big power spike after the laning phase, you should play more carefully until that happens, or, as I said before, you risk having to farm when you should be strong. As soon as your character's form of Soulspike is available, whether that is duels, objectives, teamfights, map clearing, or a mix of the aforementioned, you should focus your gameplay onto it to get a valuable soul gap. Tip number 2 is about missing. While laning, you have two jobs: playing your lane and making sure people stay in their place. Your enemy can go missing at any point in the laning phase. Whether that is a misplay depends on how fast you notice it, but what you should do is not part of this tip. Instead, we'll focus on how to spot someone missing and when to call it. Always call missing when someone you just killed respawns. Always call missing if both you and your partner leave lane to go for boxes. Always call missing if you don't see the character on the map when he should be on lane, such as when the wave arrives. And always call missing if you see them go for buffs or in the direction of another lane. Call out as well when Mirage unlocks his teleport if he's against you in lane. As someone who wants to take an aggressive position on another lane, you are gonna have to mind the enemy deaths and look at the map to sort of do what your teammates may not be doing. But please, take responsibility for your own lane. Tip number 3. Don't chase big ults. This is especially true with characters whose play potential is extremely high. Dynamo, Lash, and Kelvin are prime examples, but Infernus and Haze follow. The reality is that a good ultimate setup requires immense game sense, good teammates to follow up, and a good enemy team can just play around you consistently. Don't be afraid to use your cooldown to get value. A solo Dynamo ult, to secure a kill, can put your team in a 6v5 situation. An early Lash ult can make the enemy team scramble enough to become an easy catch. Every ult is best at mid-fight, but a decent enough ult will make you learn and give value to your team almost always. So press that 4 button more, and statistically you will hit game-winning ones at some point. Tip number 4, I think, I cannot count. Test your hero in the sandbox. This seems self-explanatory, but I'll show you a cool trick to test builds and give you a complementary concept. First, the idea. You should know when your character is strong, and you should feel confident about how strong or resistant each item makes you. If you don't, you'll buy randomly or by following a build that only works in some situations. Worse, you'll end up not winning duels because you can't trust your own output. Let's not get into itemization right now, and just let's get to the tip. Get a character who you feel as your most common matchup as the dummy. Take control of him and put him at around the 12k soul level. Buy items from either a default build or copy the build from someone you just played against. Then do the same for 20k and 40k. Now go back to your character and try out some different build. See how each item feels and where your damage comes from. Do you need the time to deal damage, or do you do your damage very quickly? You will see that different builds and playstyles revolve around the time to kill that you're aiming for, and also whether your character is a single target damage or AoE. When you understand what your main source of damage are, then you can buy to optimize them, with slowing items if your damage relies on hitting shots, with movement items if you have to wait for your cooldowns or be on top of high grounds, or with tanking items if you're confident that you just need to stay alive long enough to win a fight. A useful tip is to use this command. We are in an ideal scenario, but it's still interesting to get a feel for what your perfect DPS would be. Tip number 5. Consistency is fake. The way you play each game differs widely based on your team comp, the enemy comp, and which players form these two. The only constant, for now, are your character's cooldowns. Your teammates could make your Soulspike mechanic unfollowable, and you'd have to try something else. The key point to understand is that you won't be able to always perform in the same way. Every enemy could only play to avoid your cooldowns, making you feel as if you lost skill from the previous game. Otherwise, they could just ignore you and straight line in front of you every fight. Trying to have a consistent gameplay every match is difficult and could make you frustrated at your own skill, when in reality you're just facing different people. If the enemy always look at you, you could prioritize movement skills and removals to make them waste cooldowns while your team kills them. If you're ignored, give gas to your damage and get free souls. Of course, the enemy will also adapt during a match, so keep an eye out for how you should play, but do not put yourself down anytime you're not the carry or anytime you think that you're not being consistent with your usual gameplay. Tip number 6. 5 minutes. Every 5 minutes the map gives you objectives to do. Focus on those objectives. Even if they scale with the game, an early bridge buff can make you as strong as someone who just won their lane, while a later one can give your team a numbers 6k soul lead, so not a proper one, but on stats and on paper a real one. Call the buffs 1 minute prior, and consider stealing them as a decent trade if the enemies are sure to get an important objective of yours. So if you're losing a walker or you cannot reach a good point of the map to help your team, going for a buff is still a decent catch. Arguably, the more interesting mechanic in the game is the urn. If done with proper timing, it can act as a team soul spike at every point in the game. Of course, some characters are better than others at securing the urn, such as Kelvin with his dome or Dynamo with his self-TP in place. The same works with Viscous, and there are other circumstances for who can contest it better. But the idea is that when the timer comes close to the next set of 5 minutes, avoiding fights and prioritizing map control is a great way to ensure safer urn and buffs for your team. And these are easy ways to win more fights and to win a game. I have once again lost count of the tips. Next tip. Don't give up. Before starting to rank up, the biggest problem I had was being active in the mid game, and this made it so that 70% of my games looked lost at the 15-minute mark. I've learned to turn about 45% of those already lost games into wins. This game gives you many comeback mechanics, and pushing your base without a pick is a very hard task even with substantial thought differences for the enemy. My personal routine for bringing back a lost game is a bit dependent on your team, but stay with me. You have to make sure that the entire team is coordinated on only taking fights if the kill can be acquired for free and very quickly. Your game plan should involve getting control of the lanes relevant for the soloq close to that 5-minute mark. As long as you can play in a boring manner and keep doing the urn, you can expect the enemies to overstep into your space when they shouldn't. If your team is playing close enough to their base because they're scared, this also means that they can quickly rotate to punish mistakes because you're close to lanes. This factor, combined with the timed objectives spawning consistently, can give you multiple windows for outnumbers fights where your team, even if behind, can trade kills for good souls. The core of the matter is that a lot of people have no clue what to do with souls or with an advantage, and they end up feeding or not farming to secure a win. And this is not rank reliant. Of course, the lower you go, the worse this is gonna be, but I've won a lot of lost games even in Eternus. Leaving a game or losing your mantle when you lose the early part of the match makes little sense, especially when the later part of the game is the more macro reliant and even a mechanically worse team can win it. Next tip, hold more space in lane. Try to not stack up in the same position as your teammate. If this is the main line of sight, the enemy will have an easier time spamming cooldowns and covering up. Instead, you want to get a position of control when available, and create 2 different points from which the enemy has to take cover. This will make it easier for you to control the trooper position, and the enemy may have to give up some of their souls to push you back. Second to last tip, death is not healthy. Arguably a fairly nuanced topic, but anytime you die, you stunt your growth. Give space to the enemy and increase the soul count of the opponents. Your time has value, so every second lost by dying is almost double its value soul being gifted to the enemy. That is justified in two situations. The first one is if you die within the efficiency window of any action. So if you die in a fight, it's okay. If you die because you're chasing, it's a bit worse. The second one is related to space making and baiting. This gets over-justified many times, but generally speaking, dying for an objective is worth early game, when the respawn timers are so low that the soul and slots gained from the objectives outvalue anything you could have done with that time, and it's worth when your team gets heavy win conditions due to your action, such as stalling a mid-boss while your teammates kill the enemy patron. Every other death is debatably not worth and is a stunt to your tempo. So when your game is already set in stone due to a great soul gap or a great draft, you should farm, position and buy to maximize your survivability. If you're strong, the enemies should have to overinvest resources to kill you, and your team should be able to trade out an objective for it. If this doesn't sound familiar, let me ring you a bell. This is exactly what you would do if you were behind in Souls. In fact, many people use the same approach whenever they're winning or losing for setting in stone a game. I do not recommend doing it always, but if you don't know your team and you don't think they can approach taking objectives fast or winning fights, you can play to get a massive soul lead by playing safely and looking for urns and objectives. Last tip, play responsibly. If your goal is improving at the game and you can dedicate your entire life to it, it's surreal to suggest you to play as much as possible. Instead, I'd rather have you play 3 or 4 games per day maximum, with good breaks in between. The games should get as much focus as you're able to. The breaks should either be moments where you stand up and do something else, or a time to watch the fight which went wrong from your last game. If you're just trying to have fun, then focus on playing only when the game feels fun, and do not rage queue into the next game just because you lost 4 in a row. And at last, if you feel like you don't play well until you've lost 4 games, then you may want to look into a warm-up routine. My personal tip is to waste 5 to 10 minutes roaming around an empty map with movement tech, and then a full laning phase against a friend in a custom game, for a total of 20 minutes depending on how much time you want make this long. Thank you a lot for watching, I hope this can help. If you have any question, as always, leave them in the comments. And thank you again for everyone for the support I got in the past 2 videos. It's honestly insane and I never expected it. So I'll keep making videos and have a good one until then. Bye bye.